Hello and welcome back to another live conversation. I have with us our very, very special guest, Ken Goldstein, who is a certified behavioral, no, I know I missed that, professional behavioral analysis. It always gets my tongue twisted. So he is here today to really guide us in the communication aspect of things because there's so many unknowns, there's so many uncertainties. We all are feeling nervous right now. What's the future going to hold? What's the next couple of weeks are going to look like? How are things going to look like when we get back open? So you're experiencing all these anxieties, but so are your team and your patients. So what are we going to do to reassure them? How do we communicate this to them? And I know we've been talking a lot about policies and protocols, but there's the other side of that. It's the communication side. So we have none other than Ken Goldstein with us to be able to dive in a little bit more and discuss that and give us some suggestions on how to navigate this uncharted territories for us. So thanks, Ken, for joining today.
Well, Samantha, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And going forward, just call me a CPBA. It's so much easier.
I don't know. That's still CPPB.
It also sounds better at the end of my name. You got all these initials that mean nothing, but CPA works fine.
Okay.
And before we came on, we were talking about really how far we've come from March 16th to we're actually talking now about reopening. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what possibly was, well, when we open, we'll think about it, or if we open, we'll think about it. I mean, we are opening. Mm-hmm. We've been saying to everybody, we will get through with it, but it's going to look different. Mm-hmm. There's a new reality. But the one thing that is going to be consistent, whether you're a large practice, small practice, whatever your specialty is, the one thing we can always do is consistently is communicate. And communication is going to be the key. Mm-hmm. And when we come back, I think there'll be a certain sense of a bit of euphoria. It'll be kind of like a reunion. Oh, where have you been? How you been? What you doing? And so on. And I think that'll be at the top. But underneath, I'm very confident people will be nervous. They'll mm-hmm. still be stressed. There'll be anxiety. People are going to overcompensate. People are going to mm-hmm. undercompensate, and people will be over-optimistic and so on. So what can we do? How do we alleviate that? And how do we then make, every time a patient comes in, that they feel safe, mm-hmm. confident, assured that you're meeting everything that you're supposed to. So mm-hmm. communication is the key. And remember, people remember what they see and hear first. So if when they call in, if there's any confusion or I don't knows or I'm not sure's, that's going to have a negative impact. And we already have a lot of negative. Right. And then how you communicate with people, both verbally and non-verbally, is going to affect how they respond to you. Right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things, I know we chuckled before, suddenly everybody's going to want to know what you did while you were under self-imposed quarantine. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So people that usually were very quiet in the chair suddenly now might be chatty Cathy's. And the thing is, you're going to get asked the same question 27 different times, different ways, and you got to pretend it's the first time you're hearing it. For me? Oh, well, and after a while, and I think what you'll find is the first answer will be about this big, and by the end of the day, yeah, I did that fine. And so on. But remember, they haven't heard your answer. But here's a little trick. Turn it on them. Show you're interested in them. Mm-hmm. What did you do? What was it like? Did you get to see whatever? And so on. But it means you're engaged. And that's the first way of building trust, if you feel like you're engaged. So let's start by actually having dialogue. I mean, we throw out the broad term communication. Mm-hmm. There's verbal, nonverbal, and so on. But we're really just talking about talking to people, which is the greatest assurance you can give them. And if you're in control and you're comfortable and you're saying things that you've bought into and genuinely believe, it's a pretty easy conversation. But if you're tripping over your words or you're falling back on it, there's no comfort.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
my recommendation. Or make up a story. Tell me you learned to, you took a being on a high wire course online or something. You joined the circus and just make up something. Have fun with it.
yeah, yeah. And like you said, breaking the ice, right? And what better way to do that than to crack a joke and make everybody smile and laugh? Because, like you said, we've all been extremely nervous and uncertain about these times, right? All of a sudden, our world literally changed overnight. And
Yeah,
so we need to make sure that these patients, their anxiety, their stress level, and even with our team too, because, there again, we want to make sure that the communication, aside from dialogue, is also the energy that we're putting off, also how we're getting along and the vibe, so to speak, that is they feel when they come into the office. So
right.
making sure that we can't just, it's not going to be turning the key, walking in, and everything's going to be as hunky-dory as it used to be.
No.
It's going to take some time to rebuild that.
And I think once you, as you said, great point, Samantha, is once you rebuild that trust, and once you get the dialogue going, because yes, as a, me, I like to have fun with things, but there's going to have to be some serious conversations too, because people's financial situation has changed. A lot of things have changed. So where it used to be, oh yeah, we'll rebook you and you'll come back, might be, a different conversation about, no, I can't do that. And you have to be ready for that.
Hmm.
And I think that is a real skill that sometimes we overlook. Everybody's situated, including your own as the staff. And you want staff constantly now talking to each other. I just had a patient, they brought up something. In all our pre-planning and all of our anticipation, we didn't come up with that one. What are we going to do in case it happens again? More than ever, it's about dialogue, it's about input. And as an owner, you really need to encourage the input.
Yeah.
Because your staff will hear things that you may not.
Hmm.
And if you don't allow them to share it as part of the communication of your practice, which also goes to culture and so on, how are we going to keep getting better at this? And also, let's be honest, we're going to make mistakes.
Hmm.
So we have to have dialogue around that.
Hmm.
So again, and communication doesn't cost anything.
Right.
There's no price, if you want to go and buy a new chair, there's a cost. Communication just takes some effort, but there's no cost, but tremendous return on investment
Hmm.
when it's done properly
Yeah.
and effectively.
Hmm.
So
And I
that's
think a key that you mentioned is really preparing, right? Getting, even before we start seeing patients, we need to reconnect together. Also, kind of align ourselves again in terms of reminding ourselves the why, the how, and the guiding principles of how we operate. So,
yeah,
if one of our core values is having compassion, now it's having a discussion going, okay, guys, it's different times. How do we show compassion to somebody who really needs to get this treatment done but lost their job? Like, how
okay.
do we do that going forward? So in that way, like you said, everybody's not giving the same answers, but they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're kind of behaving with these guiding principles in mind, and we're empowering them and delegating to them to make those decisions and have those difficult conversations.
Right. And I love what you're talking about empowering. There's never been a time when an owner could empower his staff more or her staff more than now. Your point is a great one. Somebody doesn't have the financial wherewithal. They've been a patient for a very long time. You want to have enough latitude to be able to help them make that decision, as opposed to, well, I can't do it. I'm going to hand you off to somebody who might also not be able to. Then I'll have to get back to you because we have, and by that time, and it happens.
Yeah.
And nobody is doing it out of malice. It's because these things were never ever really prominent before. Most people came in prepared to pay, right? I mean, they didn't show up because they couldn't pay. So again, it's having that dialogue, having the input. It's allowing somebody to say, we can handle that because we now have a third-party financing. And we've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the greatest thing you can tell them. We've actually tried it. It's not onerous. It's 3 clicks. and it's pretty easy. There's no tremendous interest rate, and you can pay it out. They'll just exhale. Now, they may choose not to do it, but at least you've given them. It's kind of like you only want one person holding your hand, if that makes sense. Let me take you here. Let me help you. And that's going to be a change from everything. And now with the new sterilization, there actually may be time between patients for a clinical staff to spend a little bit longer. The rush might be, it's all different. We don't know. We don't know. So we're just communicate with people, get the message out there, and it'll save you, I think, some heartache later. Because my hope is, and I know Stream's hope is, that we are getting through this. Then we wake up in 60 days from now and again, oh, if only we'd, right? Now is the time to put. And I think, and my experience has been, if you let your staff have input and be that, they automatically will become more engaged. The whole place will elevate. And it comes to that one thing that doesn't cost any money: talking. Talking.
So let me ask you, because talking's not easy. Like you and I we're extroverts, so talking and relationships and people's energy, we feed off of that. But what about those who are a little bit more introverted, never really had team meetings to begin with? So what's kind of advice and support could you share with us for somebody to kind of step into that new chapter and taking on that leadership aspect and the communication side of it?
That's a fantastic question. I wish I had thought of that. The first thing is, again, dialogue. Getting to know your staff. It's understanding people, which is what profiling is really all about. And if they're passionate about what they're doing, they will naturally become more extroverted. So if you talk to them and give them, I'm going to call it the latitude of what you really want them to talk about. They're not going to talk about everything. That's a false expectation. But if you have an honest conversation with a staff member and say, will you be comfortable? Do you think you could handle talking about money with a patient? Normally a low introvert would not be comfortable with that, or somebody who's conflict averse. But if you give them the tool and the comfort zone and the safety net, they will embrace it because you've asked them. If you tell them they have to do it, you will get pushback. So then, as an owner, if you come up with all these new ideas and you just foist them upon everybody because you're desperately trying to rebuild your business, it won't work. So again, dialogue is, so what is your comfort zone? And anybody that's watched me or seen any of our stuff, I talk about wants and needs. And if you give somebody what they want, you'll get what you need. So you let the introverted person, what's their comfort zone? Can they talk about the following? And then they will. And they'll lead in a different way. They'll find comfort in what they're doing. So, but remember, not everybody's the same. And that's a falsehood that we do. The other thing is, just because I like something, you must. Oh, this is the world's greatest movie. Well, I don't like it, but I like it. You must like it.
But it was so good, right? Yeah.
Do it again. Hey, have you seen such and such on Netflix? Probably the biggest question that's been asked in the last 6 weeks. And then sometimes when somebody gives you that and you did look at it and you didn't like it, you're kind of like, yeah, it's okay. You see, but again, if you feel safe, you can say that. And the other thing that is prominent in communication, we tend to communicate with people we like much easier than people we don't like. So if there's somebody on the team that you've always chatted with, and I'm not saying a clique or anything, you're going to carry on. But now's the time to kind of expand, like let the ripples go out. Find the shared outcome. Find something you both have in common. I would bet there are people that have worked together for 10 years. They don't know anything about each other.
Yeah.
You show up on Monday, you work all day, you're very polite. There's no animosity, but there's no dialogue. There's no real communication. So that's going to change, I hope, because if that happens, everybody prospers.
Agreed. And
Yeah.
I love those questions about, do you feel comfortable? What do you think of, really kind of getting their feedback on that. And then also that's going to help you when it comes to putting these protocols together as well. Again, we keep saying this is uncharted territory. So this is now the time that is more important to be communicating with our team. And, as we're preparing to get open, having those conversations right now and giving team members the time to adjust to the new normal is really going to be important. And is there any guidance that you can, give to our listeners today on how they can prepare for those conversations?
Well, for one thing, don't rush anything. Just don't. I know we've been out of work 6 weeks or, approximately till people go back. And there's a natural tendency, and we've talked about other things, about the pace of returning. Understand that, allow yourself, I don't want to use the word luxury, but be smart enough to know that it's going to take time. And it's the same with the people that you want to work with and so on. Give them time to adjust. Give them time to feel comfortable. And if you're reassigning, and that's one of the things we advocated early on, look at the positions, because sometimes we have people in positions where we've let the person dictate the position, as opposed to, if that person ever leaves, how do we replace them? So now when you reshuffle the deck and you've got given people the opportunity to do things that they want, it's like, reveal the skill, release the skill, and then you will realize the return. That's 4 R's, but I only meant it to be 3. So I hope that answers the question. But if you're comfortable and you're doing a task and it's going to be an odd environment, because everybody's head's going to be on a swivel. Did I make a mistake? These are new guidelines. Oh my God, I didn't clean this well enough. And so who's watching me? Who's not watching me? Which goes back to the communication of, it's okay. It's okay. We're in this together.
Exactly.
And that's going to translate to the patients. What are we going to communicate with them before they show up? What are we going to communicate with them before they come? What can they really expect? And I know the other day we did a Facebook Live with Sherry, who one of the consultants with Stream, and she brought up a great point. You've gone to the hygienist for years. Yeah, she brings out the jackhammer drill, and away you go, and you're done. You're finished. You're in and you're out. Well, in the new reality, it might be a hand tool, which means one of two things. The appointment might be longer, or you might need multiple appointments. So part of communicating is letting people know that. But more importantly, Samantha, is letting them know why we're doing this. It's not to get more appointments it's also not to inconvenience you. We're not doing these to annoy you. We're here to assure you, to rebuild our confidence, because really we're rebuilding all of our relationships.
That's true.
It's like, for a little bit of time, people took a time out. So again, and you know what happens when you assume, so we won't go down that road. So again, back to the communication piece. It's your verbal, it's talking, it's nonverbal. And again, I know I joked about, what did you do? Roll your eyes once you're done. Be engaged, communicate, use active listening, throw it back at them. Really, you did that? You went and learned how to do, high wire diving or something? Yes, they will relax. You will relax. And then they become your ambassador, so to speak, because they go, yeah, I went to the dentist. It was okay. It was better than okay. My worst fears were, but they weren't met. I mean, they didn't happen.
Yeah.
And they were so good at the clinic. They told me I'd have to wait, but they were very good about it. Because we're all going to need new waiting room protocols. And again, all this falls under this heading of communication. What's the message we want them to receive from us? And more importantly, Samantha, at a minimum, what should they expect from us?
Well said. I think we need a mic drop here. Like, I've got a hairbrush, so I'll do that.
Let's not mention hair. Let's not mention.
Oh gosh, I know we were just talking. My hair is just slowly getting out this way. So
And
you'll see over time, all my lives will just turn into a big wavy fro. So
yes, yes. And I lived through the 60s and 70s, so we won't discuss hair either.
well, thanks so much, Ken, for coming on. There was definitely some great advice for practice owners to think about. I know being a leader isn't easy, and being a leader during difficult times like this is even harder, right? So those were definitely practical tips. Active listening, body language, focusing on rebuilding trust, and looking at more than, communication is more than dialogue, right? It's the
Everything.
energy, it's everything. So
Right.
very, very important.
And in closing, everybody, allow yourself time and don't forget to breathe. This is going to be tough. You think not working was tough? This is a whole new level of tough.
Agreed. Well, I hope all of you guys can attend our webinar that we're going to be hosting on May 5th. We're going to be talking and diving in a little bit more when it comes to rebuilding your practice after a crisis, which, COVID-19 is definitely a major crisis that we've all experienced. But going forward, there's going to be other crises and an accelerated change on our business. So how do we make sure that we future-proof our practice going forward? So make sure to join us, and I will put a link in here so in that way you guys can register and we can see you there live on Tuesday, May 5th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So thanks again, Ken. That was a pleasure, and looking forward to having you back on again.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody. Stay safe.